Hello, I'm Barbara Victor. I'm Chief Clinical Officer at OMEDS, and I'm here this evening with Dr. Michelle Borba, a world-renowned educational psychologist and author of the book, The Unselfie. Michelle has spent a great deal of time around the world encouraging communities and families to promote compassion and confidence in their children, and opportunities for schools to develop strong emotional support for their students and their teachers and their families. So welcome, Dr. Borba.
Oh, thank you. It's an absolute honor.
So you and I have talked this afternoon a little bit about some of the things that OMEDS does. One of the programs we have we call Parlor Groups, where we create opportunities for parents to meet in their homes once a month with an animator to learn good parenting strategies and create opportunities for their kids to learn compassion. What kind of tips would you give us to talk to the leaders of these groups that would form the basis of that kind of learning?
Well, first of all, I want to just acknowledge I love what you're doing in terms of Parlor Groups because it supports all of research that parents can make a difference and you can retrain your parenting styles, particularly if you work and support each other. So first thing you want to do is sit down together as a group and just talk about the concept of empathy, because it's a lot not on some of our vocabularies. What is it? It's not soft and fluffy. What advantages would it give our child? And what are things that we could do in our own homes to make a difference? Many families are doing book club read aloud. So you take the book Unselfie and you read it together as a group. Then you stop and you process, like, all right, what are some organizations in our own community right here that our children could do service projects? Or, hey, there seems to be a lot in there about literary fiction. If we read literary fiction with our children, like from Grapes of Wrath to Charlotte's Web, it actually elevates empathy. Some families do book shares, where they actually take a moment and go, we read this book, have you tried this one? So you're actually taking a moment to share ideas with one another of what works. Or you could take any of the issues in Unselfie, for instance, discipline. Mm-hmm. What are some more productive ways to do discipline so we don't shame our kids, which actually reduces empathy, but instead use more inductive discipline, which New York University says is the most powerful way to boost empathy. And that's telling your child, I'm disappointed in that behavior because I know you're a caring child. So what are we going to do next time in order to make this right? And if we just take a moment to share, here's what worked for me, or here's what didn't work, what'll begin to happen is all of the parents in each of those groups together will begin to process, hey, I can cultivate empathy, and we're doing it together.
So one of the big challenges, I guess, is to take that learning and transfer it also over to the schools. Mm-hmm. So do you have similar advice for teachers that we could support?
Oh, I love that you're doing it in the schools, because my goal is to do it everywhere. When we all talk the same language together, we're making a difference. For instance, we know that empathy is best taught as a series of habits. It's not just a lecture. But if we can find ways to weave it into our existing lessons, we're going to make a major difference. For instance, I know one teacher that as she reads Romeo and Juliet, her test at the end is paper shoes of each set of characters. And so each child, yes, they take the true-false test, but they have to come up and step on each shoe and say, here's where I'm coming from if I were Romeo, here's where I'm coming when I was Juliet. You're making a difference there. You're reading the diary of a young girl, Anne Frank. And one fabulous thing you can do is you can even do a discussion log. So each child, as you're reading the page, you write the page. And then it's, what's the major fact that's happening on that page? And then, because you're trying to get into Anne Frank's shoes, how would I feel if I were Anne Frank? What happens, it just mobilizes the child's heart so you get more and more into the shoes of the character. Obviously, a caring classroom is critical, and empathy doesn't work just by yourself. We've got to create environments that are go from me to we, but cooperative learning, classroom meetings, restorative justice, anything that helps a child learn the collaborative skills of getting along together is going to also stretch empathy. And those are natural ways that we can also build them into our classrooms.
One of the big challenges, of course, is that we've really moved towards an I and me society, both with our cell phones and with our own focus on personal ambition and achievement. It's a tough challenge to move the thinking from I and me to us and we. Are there things that as adults, we should be very conscious
Well,
of.
I'm applauding what you're saying. The title Unselfie came from a middle school child who sat there and said, we're taking all these selfies. I get what you're talking about, Dr. Borba. What we need to do is flip the lens so we're not always looking at us, and we flip it so we become an unselfie and we start focusing on others. And I went, there you go. That's an unselfie. And that would be the first step. We need to start language so it's about we, not me. What would we like to do as opposed to you're so special, what do you want to do? Because it's a collaborative kind of an occasion. We need to keep in mind that one of the things that's really taking our empathy down, because the biggest empathy dip happened worldwide around the year 2000, 40% drop. We got very, very plugged in. And the more we plug in, the more we look at a screen, what actually happens is the less we have in terms of good old people skills. So the next thing you would want to do is consciously start some unplugged times. When are we as a family or when we as a business going to put those cell phones down so we talk face to face? Because the gateway to empathy is emotional literacy. You got to be able to go, oh, you look upset today, or you sound upset. And you're not going to learn that if you're just facing a screen. 20% of Fortune 500 companies are now doing training of millennials in empathy because it's so low. What we've got to do is realize we need to step up to the plate earlier. Empathy can be cultivated in our children, but we need to be a little more intentional, a little more purposeful, and it's just all about finding natural ways to weave it in so our children begin to realize the other person matters too.
And I guess the challenge for us, those of us who work in organizations, is how do we remain conscious of building empathetic environments for our employees?
I think you nailed that one, because I think all of change starts with intentionality and consciousness of it. And so what many employers are doing is actually putting it on their screensaver, be a little more empathetic, or put a Post-it note on your, on your refrigerator. So there's where we start. We also need to keep our own empathy up. Some ideas that you may want to consider: when stress builds, your empathy goes down because you're now in survival mode. Many businesses are adding yoga or adding deep breathing or mindfulness training just during times that you can sit there and practice as a habit to keep your empathy open. Another idea that you may want to do, reading literary fiction works not only for kids, but also for grown-ups. So how about starting some book clubs where you read good quality literary fiction to journey into the shoes of another character, or making sure that there's more opportunities for deeper discussions so that you can share, that's my idea, what's yours? Oh, here's where you're coming from. Because deep communication is what's going to help us understand where the other person is coming from. And I fear we've kind of lost the art of conversation face-to-face style. Simple little things, but if you keep practicing them, they become habits, and it'll change your behavior as well as those you're working with.
Well, thank you.
You're so
It's
welcome.
very important that we talk to people like you who are promoting this kind of compassion and behavior towards each other. I
Well,
appreciate it.
I think that's our best hope for a better world. We get on board together, that's what we do.
I'm on your team.
Thank
Thanks.
you.